Inside the warehouse at Oriole Park at Camden Yards, it is the MASN All Access Podcast. Paul Mancano, Bobby Blanco here with you. Mutual off day this beautiful Monday afternoon. We've got a lot to talk about here today, Bobby.
It's like one of our holidays. It's also strange that we got a mutual off day here at MASN, like the week after the All-Star break.
Yeah, literally like, 3 games after the All-Star break.
So we get a break after the break, which is kind of nice. But easing back into the baseballs.
Easing right back into the baseballs. The Orioles didn't waste much time easing right back in. The front office didn't, at least. Diving right into the trade market. We're going to touch on, of course,
baseball never sleeps.
The Andrew Cashner trade and what kind of impact that will have on the Orioles and the Red Sox.
Yeah.
We're going to hear from Mike Elias. We're going to hear from Brandon Hyde. Both of those guys talked about the impact that Cashner had and about the importance of this deal. We'll talk about the two guys that they got back. And then we'll round things out with, I've got a bone to pick with Red Sox manager, what's his name? Alex Cora.
Alex Cora. I was gonna leave you hanging out to dry right there.
There we go.
Like, he's got
it. My first bone to pick is I don't remember his name. So that's, but let's start with this, Bobby.
Okay.
On a down note, Trey Mancini has been slumping. He has been in a terrible slump.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it happens to also coincide with him, unfortunately, not getting picked for the All-Star game. And you wonder if he's just kind of bummed out by that. You know, it's hard to find a reason for why he's slumping as hard as he is. Then I went back and I thought, well, I remember that Joey Rickard was claimed off of waivers by the Giants near the end of June. Joey Rickard was, of course, Trey Mancini's, maybe his best friend on the team. Mm-hmm. They were good friends, hung out all the time. And I looked at how Mancini is doing since Rickard left the organization. That was June 21st. Since then, Trey Mancini's hitting 177 with just 1 double, 1 homer, and 11 hits. Did the loss of his best friend from the team cause this tremendous slump?
Possibly. I mean, I think that would cause me to go into a slump. You know, someone who you can always rely on to be there and talk to and like help work through a slump. You know, I'm sure that Trey and Joey talked about their approaches a lot and you know what different things they could do and analyze the game together a lot. So yeah, it's definitely a possibility. It also could just be a very interesting coincidence.
It is probably a coincidence.
I think also definitely bummed about the All-Star snub.
Yes.
So I think that could also play into it as well. But you know, slumps happen, and I think it's also kind of got buried. This slump, like what he's doing on the field, because so many people were talking about how he didn't get selected to the All-Star game, how he deserved to go, and then how also up to that point, did you happen to see what he was batting on, like entering June 21st? Did you happen to see that?
It was over 300.
It was?
I mean, he was at like 304 at that point.
Let's see.
So, I mean, look, if all I'm saying, Bobby, is if I got traded tomorrow.
He was hitting 304 after June 19th.
Yeah. So all I'm saying, Bobby, is if I got traded tomorrow, if I left tomorrow, I would hope that your performance would struggle immensely because you miss me. That's all I'm saying.
Well, cool. So you're just damning the podcast and all of MASN and all that.
I'm not leaving. I'm just saying.
No, I know, but if you were
I better mean a lot to you, Bobby.
I'm telling you right now, I'm not allowing you to go to NESN.
I'm not allowing myself to go to NESN either.
Yeah.
Not a big
Red
Boston
Sox
sports
they've
guy.
already taken enough from us.
They including Andrew Cashner. It's a perfect transition. Although, real quick, I do want to say, remember last year when Machado got traded and Scope all of a sudden just went on a tear?
Yeah.
So it's like the opposite of that, of the best friend.
Yeah.
You know, having a negative impact.
Yeah, but well, it's hard to tell for the player who actually got traded, but I believe Manny kind of went on a slump in his first couple of games as a Dodger. Like he hit like a homer, I think, in his first game. Everyone was like, "Woo!" And then like he kind of leveled off.
But Scope got like Player of the Week,
right?
And which was perfect timing because it allowed the O's to cash in.
That also timed up with Scope coming back from his injury last year.
True.
Yeah.
Speaking of cashing in at the right time, the O's cashed in on Cashner nearly at a perfect time. If you look at, obviously the deal was made on Saturday, pretty much between games 1 and 2.
Yep.
Andrew Cashner, since the beginning of June, now he's having a good season. He has a winning record on a team that isn't even close to having a winning record themselves. Since the beginning of June, 3-1, a 1.41 ERA, and opponents are hitting 168 against him. And his last 2 starts right before the trade, 7 strong innings, giving up 1 run against the Blue Jays. And then the start before that, 7 innings in which he did not allow a run to the Cleveland Indians, a team that the Red Sox might have to go through if they end up in the AL wildcard game.
Yep. It's well, I think the interesting part was, like you mentioned, was the timing of it, in that not just that they pulled the trigger so quickly, like a couple weeks ahead of the deadline, but they also did it in between a doubleheader. Like, how often does that occur where a player gets traded and there's still a game to be played after a game, and then there's another game to be played, and the media can go in and talk to him before he actually leaves the organization. So, it was interesting that we saw reporters got to talk to Cashner, obviously Hyde and Elias. But the timing of it was interesting. The return to Dominican Summer League players, both 17 years old. I mean, I think it's kind of all across the board agreed, like a no-brainer. This, and Michael, we'll hear from Michael Elias shortly, but he mentioned this was our goal all along. We were trying to restock this farm system with young talent, and especially in the international markets where this organization has not, dipped their toe in very often up until this past year. So it was kind of a no-brainer for both sides. The Red Sox need rotation help, obviously, to make a push toward the playoffs, and the Orioles need prospects to bolster their summer league teams. And one of them's going to Summer League 1, the other one's going to Summer League 2 in the Dominican. So it was a good trade all around, and the timing was kind of just kind of threw you off a little bit.
And there was for people saying, I don't know why they didn't wait. There was no benefit for waiting, because they are cashing in on literally maybe his best start.
And you're really cashing in on that pun, too.
I know, I am using that a lot. But they are trading him right after he has an amazing month. He's not going to have many, odds are his next couple starts, he's not going to allow 1 or no runs in 7 innings.
Well, right. That's kind of the point I would say, is that if you were to wait, I mean, it's always obviously a gamble, but I think the odds are he would tailor off.
Yeah.
No offense to Cashner, but odds are he wouldn't have these starts like you just mentioned, his last 2, and his price would go down. Now, you could also argue, well, the closer you get to the deadline, the more desperate teams get.
Right.
That's a fair point as well. But I think the right offer came about. You got 2 young prospects, guys that Michael Elias has said that they've scouted. They know what they're getting out of these 2 guys. Even though they're only 17 years old, they know what they are right now. I think the deal's the deal. Make it happen. There's no point in waiting if you got something that you think is going to work.
And the Red Sox might, in theory, be paying a little bit more because they can get an extra start or 2 out of Cashner before that July 31st trade deadline, or an extra relief appearance, or however they.
And then they can go after that. This Cashner guy maybe not will hold up. Let's go get another guy.
Exactly. So in terms of the money aspect of it, because Cashner signed that deal right during spring training last year with the Orioles. Ken Rosenthal is reporting kind of the cash flow back and forth. It is a little bit confusing. So according to Ken Rosenthal, Cashner is due $3.5 million for the rest of the season, 2019.
Yeah.
The Red Sox are going to get $1.78 million in order to cover part of that. And he also says the Orioles will include additional money if Cashner reaches certain performance bonuses based upon innings and starts. So there are performance bonuses, and then there's also a vesting option for next year.
Yeah.
So it vests automatically if he throws a combined 340 innings between last season, 2018, and 2019. Or it turns into a player option if he tops 360. He's probably not going to top 360. He's at 249 and a third between last year and the beginning for half of this year combined. So he would need to throw about 90 and 2/3 innings over the next 69 games. Nice. To vest that option.
Yeah.
So he would have to make, I added it up, he would have to make like 13 or 14 starts and average about 7 innings in those starts. For the Reds for that vesting option to vest,
right?
Which I think is probably unlikely.
Well, it's not. Well, maybe unlikely, but it's possible.
It is
69
possible.
games left. If he pitches every 5 days, he's slated to make his first Red Sox start Tuesday.
Yeah.
Which also lines him up to start Sunday at Oriole Park at Camden Yards against the
Orioles.
When the Red Sox come to Baltimore. But with 69 games left, if he pitches every 5 days, he could make about 13 starts.
Yeah.
Other interesting thing though is Cashner has only made 30 starts once in his career, so he's always fallen short of that marker. So it's unlikely, but it's not completely out of the realm of possibility, especially considering, how he's pitched as of late. If he can keep it up, over the course of the second half of the season, it's possible.
Well, and the Red Sox know that is a number that has to be hit for the vesting option.
And so I'm guessing that they're kind of banking on that's not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly, because in terms of money, they are probably pushed right up against the threshold in terms of the luxury tax. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how many years they want to do that for, and so
it's also something they can control.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they don't have to start them.
They
can pull them early in innings.
So they know
get another starter and move him to the bullpen.
Exactly, because they know that number is going to be hit. Maybe he's sitting at 339, and they're like, nah, just take this day.
Why don't you take the day off?
Well, that's like remember what happened last year with CC Sabathia, and he had a certain number that he had to hit, and he decided to hit a batter in order to remove himself from a game. It was a whole thing.
Yeah.
So in terms of the return for those guys, it is the two 17-year-old Venezuelans who are headed to the Dominican Summer League. And Mike Elias, between the two games yesterday, he talked about Saturday, talked about the trade that was made of Andrew Cashner, the kind of guy that he was for the club, and also the fact that they wanted to focus on getting youth back into this organization. Take a listen.
Tough day for us, saying goodbye to Cash, and he was terrific for us all year. Linchpin in the rotation and in the clubhouse. I think it was a rejuvenation kind of year for him. I think he gelled really well with the coaching staff. We gave him some information that helped him kind of turn his game around. But we've made no secret of the fact that we're eyeing our broad long-term strategy, which is getting the best young talent that we can from every angle. And there's a trade deadline coming up, and had talks with several teams, but Boston was the most serious and most aggressive, and we ended up getting two very young players that we like. I think in particular with them being Dominican players. I'm sorry, they're not Dominicans. Dominican Summer League players. One of my concerns is, we haven't been pulling from the international market steadily the last few years. We've started now, but that is a pipeline that is lagging for us. And I think, trading for that age group is going to help us kind of stave off the balance that we're going to need with the rest of the league and the competitors and equalize a little more quickly.
Bobby, we've had several moments this season where we've said, all right, this is a moment where we learn a lot about Mike Elias. We learned a lot about him when he made his coaching staff hires. We learned a lot about him in his first draft back in the beginning of June. I think this trade deadline and this first trade is going to tell us exactly how he's going to approach the trade market, and it just gives us a sneak peek of what he looks for in returns and when he looks to deal these guys.
I mean, he said it right there. I mean, he's looking for international prospects.
Yeah.
International talent, because this is, again, somewhere where the Orioles have not grabbed talent from in terms of this international pool. We talked about this during the international signing pool show. We understand what he's going for, what he wants. I think this is also showing what other teams, what he's expecting back for possible pieces he's going to trade off closer to the deadline. And, that actually might suit well for the Orioles. I think teams, and, we know teams are going to be highly coveted over their top prospects. They're not going to just dish out their top prospects for certain players. But Michael Elias probably figures he can get a good handful of young, unproven players, 17-year-olds, teenagers like these two guys, in future deals. And so it's something that, he's making it known what he wants to do, what he expects back for when he trades off these pieces closer to the deadline. And I think teams now understand what he wants back, and that could possibly help them make more deals as we get closer to July 31st.
Exactly. It's the kind of, as guys get closer to the bigs and they become more sure things and they get into the top, we start to discover exactly, what they are.
Yeah.
And the guys that are 21 that are in AA and AAA, if they're good, they're going to be top prospects. And if they're not going to be.
Yeah.
So getting these guys as young as you get them makes, it makes the Red Sox say, well, we don't really know what they're going to be. So they, it's hard to determine their value. And so what the Orioles might be doing is getting guys that are younger because they can afford to.
Right.
They can afford to wait until these guys are 21 and 4 years from now.
Right.
And these guys in several years might be top 30 prospects. We don't know.
Yeah.
But right now they're not, just because they're so far away. It's impossible to tell.
I mean, and we've talked about this too during the draft show and the international market show. You know, we don't know the timeline for this rebuild.
Yeah.
You know, and we shouldn't expect Mike Elias and his people to put a deadline on it because that's just too many expectations. But we don't know an exact timeline. So get all the young guys now. You figure you're on track right now to get the number 1 draft pick again next year. Grab as many young players as you can by trading off these assets that you know are not going to be part of this team in 2019, in 2020, and 2021. You know, grab all these young players that, so ideally, you know, as we move along through this rebuild, they all kind of mesh together at the same time and become, you know, your top prospects at AA, AAA here in Baltimore, you know, and then that's how you kind of rebuild and expect to get back into competing mode.
And it's easier to win trades when you're in the Orioles position where you're not the team that's desperate.
Right.
You know, you want to trade these guys, these veterans, but the Red Sox are the team that is desperate. You are the one holding the player, holding the card. It's the other team that is trying to pry him from you.
And that allows them, the Orioles, also to be a little greedy.
Exactly.
And be like, hey, you know, you need this guy. You don't need these 2 17-year-olds in your summer league. Why don't you send them our way?
Exactly. So the 2 guys that they did get, again, Mike Elias, we saw during the draft that he loves to get up the middle talent, and he loves to get guys like center fielders and shortstops are ideal because those tend to be very athletic positions. And even if they don't stick at those spots, in theory, you can shift them over to other ones fairly easily. So the outfielder is Elio Prado. His counting stats so far in the DSL are a little bit better than the other guy, Nolbert Sanchez. So Prado, both of these guys are 17. They're from Venezuela. Prado signed for just $85,000 by the Red Sox last year. His stats right now in the DSL, he's hitting over 300, 400 on base percentage, 3 dingers, 26 RBIs. He's got 9 stolen bases, so he's got some speed, and he walks a heck of a lot in 30 games. He's got 20 walks in 33 games. And then Nolbert Romero, 17 years old from Venezuela. Again, he signed for a much bigger chunk of change, $275,000. Mike Elias said he's a shortstop, but he can also play third base if needed. His counting stats not as good, 264 average, 2 homers in 29 games, but he's a defensive first kind of guy with an above average arm and a smooth swing according to scouting reports. So those are the 2 guys that they got for Cashner.
Mike Elias is also not only showing us what the Orioles expect back in these trades or what they're aiming for to get back, but he's also sticking to the original plan of where they covet talent, where they've up the middle. We've talked about this 100 times now, Paul. A shortstop who has played some third base, but also second base, and then an outfielder who plays all 3 positions, but mostly in center field. Yeah. Straight up the middle. That's where they value these talents, these young athletic guys, and that's where they're going to continue aiming for as we move forward closer to July 31st.
Here's what Mike Elias had to say about the 2 guys that they're bringing into their organization.
Elio Prado, in particular, is off to a really good start in the Dominican Summer League. Now, those are complex leagues. You know, the stats can be misleading. A lot can change. But he's a center fielder with some pop. Runs well. He's been stealing bases. You know, we've had eyes on him that like what they see, and you know, we'll see what we get. There's a lot of development ahead for him. And Romero is an infielder, has the capability to move around different positions. Been playing mostly third base this year, but we think he's got a shot to develop as a shortstop and making pretty good contact with pop as well. I think the Red Sox gave him some money too. So, you know, we'll see what we get. Obviously, it'll take several years to find out what we've got with these guys, but I do feel like that age group and that pipeline is something we wanted to bolster and give a jolt to, and this helps with that.
So that was Mike Elias yesterday, talking about those 2 guys that they got. They sent scouts to watch them, so they have an up close and personal view. I mean, he mentioned that the counting stats for the DSL is kind of complex, just similar to minor leagues.
Right.
It's kind of hard to determine how good these guys are going to be, but they like what they've seen from a scouting perspective. And look, they were able to unload a player that was not going to be here long term, and they got youthful guys back. So to me, that's, you know, that it not no matter what they got was going to be a win, but to get 2 young guys who are still have loads of potential, that's a win.
Yeah, and it gets the ball moving. You know, we knew this was going to happen. Guys are going to start getting traded off. It's only July 15th. It's happened July 13th.
Yeah.
Let's get going. Like, it's no secret the Orioles are going to be trading their pieces off as we get closer to the end of the month. Let's get guys, and also at their peak value. Like we just mentioned how Cashner, had his great 2 starts. He's never going to be more, probably never going to be more valuable than he was right when they traded him. So let's keep the ball moving. The Orioles are trading off their assets. They want young players back. Let's not wait till 4 o'clock on July 31st. Let's get these deals done now while other teams are waiting and holding off.
And from a 4,000 foot view, I don't know how high up do airplanes fly? 100,000? No, that sounds way too high.
That sounds high.
10,000 feet? 5,000 feet? I don't know. From a very high
Intern
view.
No, that was intern Cam. Intern Cam says
5,000 feet. So if he's wrong, it's intern Cam's fault. From a macro perspective, this deal was a no-brainer. And then you unfortunately get down to the micro perspective, which is the everyday team aspects of this. And it did come at a bad time for the team itself, considering Dylan Bundy is out.
Yeah.
The team is in desperate need of just guys who can take the ball on every 5 days. And at this point, Brandon Hyde, look, he obviously knew what he was coming into when he took this job. But he has still, you can't blame him, been frustrated with how difficult it has been to get guys on the mound every day, 1 through 5. But he talked about, after that deal was made, he talked about the kind of guy that Andrew Cashner was, the fact that he was a veteran in the clubhouse, and it sounded like Cash and Hyde really got along in the short time that they were together in the Orioles organization. Take a listen to Brandon Hyde talking about Andrew Cashner yesterday.
Good for Andrew Cashner. Happy for him. He was phenomenal for me, for the coaching staff, for the players. He's an ultimate team guy, ultra pro, unbelievably competitive, and was a huge help, not only for me but for everybody else. And wish him the best, and except when we face him. But hopefully he gets to the chance to get in the postseason, and wishing good things for him.
So it is unfortunate for Brandon Hyde, and you can tell right before that soundbite where he was like, I don't even know who we're going to start, because it also happened right in the middle of a doubleheader.
Yeah.
So the poor guy is trying to figure out not only how to fill out, Saturday, the 2 games of the doubleheader, then he's got Sunday. He does have the off day, obviously, today, but it's
Cash was scheduled to pitch Sunday.
Yeah.
So it's all right, well, now I got to figure out who's pitching tonight and tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I don't get a 26th man on Sunday. So.
Yep. Yeah. So, but it does sound like the veteran presence on this very young team that Andrew Cashner brought will be missed. But it's something that he also said, I think, guys, it's just a matter of stepping up.
Yeah.
It's not no one guy has to now be Andrew Cashner, but every little guy will pick up the slack.
It's creating opportunities. I mean, we've said all along, this is a place where guys can come and get an opportunity to play and prove their worth. Now this is another spot for another starting pitcher to slide in and be like, hey, I can be a pitcher. I can be a starter right here and eat up innings and get guys out for you over a course of the second half of the season, improve my consistency, my worth.
And we've already seen a couple solid starts from Woj. We've seen some solid starts from Eshelman. It's just, we're just going to have to see a lot more. We're just going to have to see a lot more of it. And the Dylan Bundy injury confuses things in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It primarily confuses for Brandon Hyde who he's going to start, but then on the macro perspective, now it's July 15th.
Yep.
So we're 2 weeks away from the deadline. What is his trade value going to be? Is it even going to be existent?
There might not be any because he's injured and he's not going to 10-day retroactive to whatever day it was, but he might not pitch again until next week, the week leading up to the trade deadline. So that maybe gives him 1, possibly 2 outings before the 31st. That might not be enough to prove that there's a value in this guy that that some other team would want.
And it's not like he was tearing it up before he
got
injured.
He wasn't.
That's the problem.
Pitching at Cashner's level even. So it's like he had limited value to begin with, and now it's less so.
Yeah, and so you could make an argument that unless they want to trade Trey Mancini, and we don't know exactly if they are, that Cashner was the biggest known trade chip that the Orioles were holding, and they just turned him in, much like they did last year, where they the first big trade chip. The biggest trade chip was the first to go in Manny Machado.
Yep, that's correct. And there's more to follow.
Definitely.
And it will be interesting to track and see over these next 2 weeks, not just the rumblings of who might go, but how these guys are performing leading up to their possible departure from Baltimore. Are they going to be able to, one, obviously have value right now, and two, hold on to that value long enough for the Orioles to make a deal for them and get something in return?
Exactly. Now, Bobby, let's stick with the starting pitching, but let's go a little bit back in time here. I know it was almost a week ago.
Yep.
But the All-Star game.
Okay.
John Means, who was selected to the All-Star game, he was the only representative, as we talked about. Trey Mancini was probably snubbed. John Means went to the All-Star game. Amazing story. I don't know if you read that Baltimore Sun article that Nathan wrote, but he a year ago, he was thinking about leaving baseball, thought he might have to. Spent 3 straight years in Bowie, and somehow, all of a sudden, gets a spot on the team, gets a spot in the starting rotation, gets a 2.5 ERA, gets an All-Star nod.
Yep.
Incredible story. He did not pitch in that All-Star game. He did not pitch. And I think I speak for a lot of Orioles fans when I say pretty frustrating. Pretty frustrating that he didn't get the ball at all in that 9-inning game. Bobby, you disagree?
I don't disagree with the sentiment. It's frustrating, but it happens. I think it's I understand people's gripes about it. I also don't think that it helped that it was the Red Sox manager making the decision and he pitched a Yankees pitcher. I think that also rubs Orioles fans the wrong way. Totally understandable. But I think it's realistic to, going into that game, I never actually thought he was going to pitch it to begin with. I mean, I think if you look at the list of the roster, in terms of pitchers, he was probably the last guy on that list to get into the game. He was the one and only Orioles selection. He's a rookie. I'm not saying he didn't deserve to pitch in the game. I'm just saying realistically. And also as a pitcher, there's only so many ways to get a pitcher into the game. It's not like you can do a mass sub with like position players.
Well, there was a golden opportunity for Alex.
He also wasn't the only pitcher that didn't pitch. So who's to say, go ahead, explain your golden opportunity.
So the golden opportunity was in the 8th inning. The American League was up 4-1, I believe, at this point. Brad Hand enters the game. Now, obviously, he's an Indians pitcher. Mm-hmm. The game is being played in Cleveland, so I get it. He's a hometown guy. Mm-hmm. Brad Hand proceeds to throw 33 pitches, walk 2 batters, allow 2 hits, give up 2 runs, throw just 17 strikes out of those 33 pitches, almost surrender the lead before he leaves the game, pitches the entire 8th inning.
Yeah.
Why on earth would Brad Hand not be pulled from that game and John Means be put in that game in that instance?
I think it's exactly what you said, because he was the hometown guy.
So Carlos Santana started the game.
Right.
Who was the guy that won the MVP for them? Bieber. Shane Bieber had already pitched in that game. He was already...
Which also, why did he get... whatever. He had one.
I know. It was
cool.
But he struck out the side. You already had 2 hometown heroes. Why does Hand need to pitch the entire inning? He already had walked 2 guys, allowed 2 hits, and given up 2 runs.
Well, because he's the hometown... He's an Indian.
But he does not deserve to literally almost blow the game.
Okay, but
he almost blew the game in the 8th inning.
True, but then go back to last year... All-Star game in Nats Park, Max Scherzer pitched 2 innings and he gave up 2 runs in the 2nd inning and put the NL down 2-0.
He's Max dang Scherzer.
Okay, but he's also pitching in his hometown park. He pitched 2 innings. He took away an inning from someone who probably deserved to pitch that didn't get to pitch because he's the hometown guy.
I'm not going to relitigate last year. I'm just saying
it's the same idea
instance.
because he's the hometown pitcher.
Okay, well then I may have a problem with that too.
He's going to get a full inning.
But I have a problem with Brad Hand getting that entire inning. I have no problem with Aroldis Chapman getting 1, 2, 3 in the 9th.
All right, that's fine. That's fine. You have a problem with Brad Hand getting the full inning. That's fine. But who's to say, again, John Means wasn't the only pitcher to not pitch. Who's to say that John Means is the guy to come in and replace him?
Well, so John Means was not, I agree, obviously he was not the only pitcher not to pitch, but every one of those other pitchers who didn't pitch, their team had another representative who played in that game.
Okay.
So and if you look at both the National League and the American League side, there were players on bad teams who were the only representatives of their teams who also got to pitch, and John Means was not one of those. Will Smith for the Giants pitched.
Big Willie style.
He's on a terrible Giants team. is one of those selections that was just kind of like a de facto selection because he didn't really deserve it, but they needed a representative. Sandy Alcantara, the pitcher for the Miami Marlins, who has it by no means should be an all-star, but because he's the only representative, he got to pitch. And Shane Green for the terrible Detroit Tigers got to pitch. How in the world could you not find one out or one batter for John Means to pitch?
You're really going to bring... I mean, I know it's an all-star game, doesn't matter, but you're really going to do a pitching change just for one batter?
Yes,
just to get the guy in?
That's what the National League did. They had pitchers come in for one out. And also, that's how games in 2019 are played.
But you also have the argument that the game doesn't matter, so why approach it like a real game?
You're not. You're not approaching it like a real game. You were making sure that this guy gets into the game.
Okay.
Even if you approach it like a real game, there's a reason to put him in, and even if you don't, there's a reason to put him in.
Yeah.
You need to why have representatives from every team? Why make that a rule if you're not going to play guys?
I sort of agree with that. Again, I think it's not like the Pro Bowl. It's not like the NBA or NHL All-Star games where there's an opportunity for a guy from every team to get into the game. It's just different. It's just the way the game is set up, especially for a pitcher. There's only so many chances to get him in the game.
There are
also there's way more cautious with pitchers than any other position player in terms of playing in the All-Star game.
So if they're way more cautious, why have a guy throw 33 pitches when he doesn't need to?
Well, again, I think because he was the hometown guy. If it was anyone but the hometown guy, they probably would have pulled him. Yes, but I would also say that going into that game, I am sure Alex Cora had a list or whatever, like a plan. This is the situation that this particular player is going to get in the game. And John Means just never came up.
Well, he should have been. That's my point is if you literally, the Orioles have the worst record in baseball at this point. They have had the draft to look forward to, which was an awesome day. They had J2 to look forward to, which was an awesome day. If you're an Orioles fan and you get John Means in the All-Star game, think of all the reason that all these teams need representatives is so that a kid in Baltimore can watch that All-Star game and see a representative that he saw in the park pitch on 2 weeks ago be pitching on a national stage and a chance that he may never get again.
Yeah.
John Means, it may never get this chance again. He's 26 years old. It was a miracle that he was even there. He did not get to pitch. Brad Hand is a 3-time All-Star. He has gotten this opportunity 3 times. He is 30 years old. He has gotten this opportunity 3 different times. John Means may never get this chance again, and he just kind of got robbed of it.
I think because he also was a multiple All-Star means he earned the benefit of the doubt to get that full inning.
But he took the benefit of the doubt, and he threw it out the window by allowing 2 runs on 2 hits and 2 walks. I mean, he did not deserve to finish that inning.
I honestly think there was only 2 scenarios.
There was no doubt left. He was struggling.
I think there was only 2 scenarios where John Means was going to pitch in that game. Again, I did not think he would pitch in that game. And to your point of get him in the game because so some kid in Baltimore watched the game. That some kid watched the game anyways to see if he got in.
He left the game angry.
Well, that's that. What does baseball or Alex Cora care about that?
What? Well, then they clearly care about it. Otherwise, they wouldn't make it a requirement.
What they clearly care about is getting New York, L.A., Chicago to watch the game. Baltimore is not on the top of their list. And we know this because the compensatory picks that the Orioles got.
Then why do they make it a requirement that
that's the other question? It's why to make a requirement that everyone gets a player. I understand that point, but that's not the point. My point is that I didn't think he would get. He was only going to pitch the game if it was a complete blowout or if it went to extra innings. And isn't the rule changed now that it only goes 10 or 11 now? They just call it a tie after
they put runners on second.
They put runner on second. That's correct. Yeah. Okay. So, but anyway, I think those are the only scenarios that John Means.
That's ridiculous. I don't think that he's the thing is it's not like he is Sandy Alcantara from the Miami Marlins where he's got an ERA of 4.
Yeah.
He got into the game with an ERA. John Means has the second best ERA of American League pitchers coming into the game that had thrown at least a certain amount of innings.
Right.
He was not a bad pitcher.
I'm not saying...
It's not like they had to shoehorn him into the game.
Right. I'm not saying that John Means didn't deserve to get in the game. It just doesn't surprise me that he didn't get into the game.
But why wouldn't he be in Alex Cora's game plan? I mean, why?
He probably was in the game plan, but again, I think it just his situation that he would have gotten a chance to pitch never came up. And to me, that's totally reasonable. I've watched countless I'm 27, so I've watched probably 20 All-Star games at this point that I can remember. And, especially in the early 2000s and mid-2000s, back when the Orioles and then starting 2005 when the Nationals, they were so bad, they would only get one. And I would always watch to see if my one guy got in. And he never did, or he would rarely do. And that's, yes, frustrating, but understandable. It's just not everyone's going to get a chance to play. Now, I understand your point. If you're going to have a representative from every team, why not play everybody? That makes total sense. That's not the question here, though. It is what it is. And the fact is that John Means didn't get the pitch. And that's understandable because it happens. It happens every year. Some teams don't get their guy to get to play, and that's just the nature of the game. And we can talk about how that's wrong, but I understand why it happened now.
I understand. I guess I get why it happened, but I think it's wrong. That's what I'm saying. Is it was the wrong decision.
That's fair.
It was a slight to whether it was I don't think Alex Cora had. I don't think he had any ill will towards Baltimore by any stretch. I just think it was a massive, massive oversight on his or the coaching staff's part not to get him into the game, to the point where the national writers, Andy McCullough of the LA Times was tweeting about John Means every inning to try to get him into the game.
Yeah.
It was an amazing story that he was even there. It was a great opportunity to get this guy a chance of a lifetime, and he didn't get it. And it made sense from a game perspective because he deserved to get in from a game perspective. It would have made sense if this game had actually mattered. And then if you look at it as just an all-star game where the game doesn't matter, it makes sense there too. Yeah. So I don't get why he didn't. It is incredibly frustrating that Orioles fans who are obviously have a tough time watching this team from a day-to-day basis, considering the win and loss record. They look forward to an all-star game where they have a chance to get a guy who deserves to be there on the national spotlight, and he doesn't get to pitch at all. No mention. It just doesn't. You have so little in actual game action to look forward to as an Orioles fan, and you get passed over in the All-Star game.
And that sucks, but I think that's just the way it is. I think it's also a product of his position. He's a pitcher, and it's tough because there are starting pitchers and then there are relief pitchers. So, you have to, as a game manager for the All-Star game, you have to get these starters, their due because they're the starters. They're like the stars of the pitching staff. But you also then have to wriggle in these relievers that got elected too, because you can't just leave them out of it. So I think it's a product of, if Trey Mancini had gone instead of John Means, Trey Mancini would have played because he's a position player. It's just easier to get position players in than, because you can pinch hit, you can do mass subs on defense. You can only, and the pitchers don't hit either, so you can only get one pitcher in at a time.
I disagree with that because I
think that's indisputable. Because how many position players did not play?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I'm trying to look it up, but I think almost every position player that was eligible to play, meaning not hurt, played. I don't think that's the same case with the pitchers.
Well, you also...
I think it's easier to get position players in the game. Trey Mancini would have played had he been on the team. John Means, while he still deserved it, was a pitcher and also a starter, so he was probably the last starter on the list to get in the game, and then you have to get relievers in too.
Well, yeah.
I think it's a product of him being a pitcher.
You don't have to give every pitcher. So what happened with the American League is every pitcher that pitched got an inning, so you were only able to get 9 guys into a game.
Right.
That you can pitch more than one guy per inning. You can give a guy a third of an inning, and then another guy a third of an inning, and then another guy a third of an inning if you really wanted to.
Well, okay, but
so there are as many opportunities.
Same thing happened with the NL, except for Woodruff and Will Smith split the eighth.
Right. Exactly. That's what they could have done. Brad Hand and John Means split the 8th inning.
Okay, but again, I'm not okay. But who's to say it would have been John? What if? Are we having the same discussion if Brad Hand did get pulled and then they put another pitcher, but it wasn't John Means, and he gets out of the inning? Are we still having the same discussion?
Yes, because
who are the 2 guys that didn't get the pitch?
I don't know.
Okay,
but they also had I think one of them was. But they also had Garrett Cole.
They also had pitchers, or players.
Houston had 5 guys in the playing in that game. Yeah. So Garrett Cole not getting in. Okay, he already had made All-Star games. I'm pretty sure with Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
and I can't remember the other guys, but. There are as many opportunities in my mind. There are as many opportunities for pitchers to get in as there are for position players. I
disagree.
Because what if you can bring Brad Hand in and he walks somebody and then you pull him?
Also, keep in mind, John Means is a starter. I mean, how often? He's come out in relief before, but how often does he do? I mean, pitchers also take longer to warm up and get ready for
Okay.
to pitch, then you can just throw a position player out there. Hey, you're pitch hitting, go.
Right.
Or hey, you're gonna go play first, go. Like it's just easier to do that as opposed to a pitcher where John Means has to go warm up for 20 minutes before he can start pitching.
I wouldn't say it's 20 minutes.
It's probably about 20 minutes.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's that long.
Pitchers, yes. Pitchers take about 20 minutes to warm up.
If you're coming in to face one batter,
how often do we see for the national side, Sean Doolittle starts if he thinks he starts warming up at the top of the eighth.
To me though, that shouldn't bar.
He's a reliever.
They had to bring in 9 different guys. I think that just doesn't matter. That's just irrelevant. I don't think that matters. Because you have spots in the bullpen for them to warm up. If you have a plan going into how you're going to attack the inning and you break it up,
so
where
that
Brad
tells
Hand
him,
is going to...
That tells him, hey, if in this situation you're going to pitch the 8th inning, so keep an eye out and start getting ready as necessary.
So why didn't they?
But it never came up.
But what was the scenario in which it was? Brad Hand allows 5 runs?
I don't think our score would have been like, hey, Brad Hand's getting booked. John Means run out to the bullpen, start warming up, or you're going to start pitching in 5 minutes. I don't think he would have done that. Again, because I think, especially in the All-Star game, a game that doesn't matter, they probably would have been way more cautious when it comes to... They are way more cautious when it comes to pitchers than position players.
But they didn't show that caution by having a reliever who probably typically does not throw 33 pitches in a game. Why is that is not showing a lack of caution by having a reliever throw 33 pitches?
Again, I think that's because he's the hometown guy.
I completely understand why fans are getting worked up.
Oxford is definitely going to get booed when he gets here 100% on Friday.
And well deserved.
Yeah, absolutely.
I understand why fans are getting worked up for it. And personally, I felt for the guy, for John Means personally.
Absolutely.
But I know that he is such a good guy that he doesn't, he didn't care.
Yeah. This is not taking away from his week. He seemed like he had a fantastic time at the game and in Cleveland that whole entire week. And I also agree with your point that, you don't know if this guy's going to make it again. So he might never have this chance.
Yeah.
So that is kind of upsetting. But in an ideal world, we'll be looking back at this in 3 years and be like, hey, remember that time AL starter John Means didn't get to pitch in his first All-Star game, and now he started for the American League and back-to-back. Hopefully we get to that point.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, so... Yeah.
Well, in the same token, hopefully we get to that point with Mancini.
Right.
And say,
right.
He didn't get it that one time, but it doesn't matter because he got it 4 more times.
It sucks that I'm on the fence. It sucks that he didn't get the pitch. I understand what happened. Let's move on.
In a year's time, I'll be complaining that they didn't start John Means because he should be the starter.
Would have really loved to have seen him
ERA.
pitch better on Saturday, though. It kind of got sucked that his first start after that he got rocked. Hopefully that was just a product of kind of getting thrown off his routine with a week off.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure that was tough. Be sure to like and subscribe anywhere that you can find the MASN All Access podcast: SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify.
Yep.
Did I miss any?
I think those are all the podcast platforms. You can also follow us on MASN All Access Facebook, MASN Orioles on YouTube and Twitter, and you can watch all of our podcasts on those platforms along with listening. And then you can also give me a follow at Bobby_Blanco. Paul?
At Paul Mancano, just my name. Thanks for listening, and we will see you later.